Hello Year 7. So in today's lesson we are going to be continuing to think about Motte and Bailey castles, and we're also going to be looking at how Motte and Bailey castles develop and change over time to make them stronger and a better use for William as he is trying to control the country. So we are going to think about how castles changed. What I would like us to think about first is what we've learned so far. So the three main ways in which William tried to control England were through the feudal system, the Domesday Book, and through building castles. I'd like you to write each of these things as a heading, so the feudal system is your first heading, and then next to it you're just going to write a sentence telling me what you know about that, and then the same for the Domesday Book and the same for building castles. Pause the video and give yourself 5 minutes to do that now. Fantastic. Okay, so the next thing we're going to have a look at is answering these questions as I explain how castles changed and go through the information here with you. So what you're going to need to do is have these questions somewhere in front of you, so you can take a screenshot of them, you can copy them down if you really want to. The PowerPoint itself will be uploaded to ClassChart, so you could look at it that way, but you're going to need to write answers to these questions. Feel free to pause the video whenever you hear an answer to a question, and then you can write your answer down and give yourself time to do that. But I'm going to go through the information with you now. So, building a Motte and Bailey castles. Normans had invented a way of building castles quickly. It was a bit like making sandcastles, but on a much bigger scale. And this shows you the way that they built Motte and Bailey castles. Some of the key features of Motte and Bailey castles were things like the motte, which is the hill that the keep was on, and the bailey itself, which was surrounded by this big palisade or a big fence made of wood. One of the key things with Motte and Bailey castles was that they were made out of wood, which made them quite difficult to make safe because it was very easy for that wood to be burnt down. It was also very likely that over time that wood would rot. So the problem with these early castles was, as I've said, they're made of wood, and to solve this problem, William and his men gradually replaced the wood with things such as stone. Okay, so the replacement of wood by stone can be seen in this picture of a castle in Totnes. So you've still got the Motte and Bailey structure, it still looks very similar, but now there are stone structures within it. These were called stone keep castles. However, stone was really expensive. This was a big negative of stone, but it didn't rot and it was much harder for attackers to destroy. We call the newer castles stone keep castles because they have a stone keep. The castle entrance then, so this was another thing that changed over time. William changed the castle entrance to make it more easy to defend. The castle entrance often had a barbican attached. This is an extra gatehouse that was used to protect the weakest part of the castle. So it's like an extra room really on front of the castle that just gives them a little bit more defence. There would also be extra soldiers and several heavy oak doors and something called a portcullis to get past. This is a portcullis. You can see it in these pictures. It's like this drop-down gate that comes down and blocks the way, and often it's made of metal to make it very, very strong. Then castles start to develop even more. So the keep itself is made out of stone, and they make the entrances much more difficult to get into. So if you look at this picture, you can see that there's this narrow staircase and one small door to come into the castle through. That's so that anyone who is up on these ramparts at the top of the castle with a bow and arrow is able to shoot at the people trying to get in with their arrows really easily, because everyone is having to bunch together to get in through the entrance. The moat of a castle is a large ditch, often filled with water to keep the enemy at a distance. This is really useful because, again, it means that your archers, the people who are firing arrows at any attackers, can get a better shot because people are further away. Castles also had drawbridges. So the drawbridge was often made out of wood and would swing up and down to let people in or out of the castle entrance. This meant that you would only let in people that you trusted. There's another example of a drawbridge there. So the bridge itself gets pulled up in front of the door so that people can't get in. Another fun feature of new castles was murder holes. Most castles had a murder hole above the main entrance. Defending soldiers would throw different things down the holes at the attacking soldiers to put them off. Attackers could get close to the castles to get in, so they had to get under the murder holes to attack the main entrance. Items that would be used include boiling water, hot ashes, and parts of dead animals. So fairly awful stuff would be thrown out of these holes down onto any attackers that were trying to get in. You also have battlements, which jutted out of the top of the walls so that soldiers could drop heavy stones and pour boiling tar onto the enemy below, a little bit like murder holes, same kind of system, but just all around the castle. And at the bottom of the curtain wall, which is the wall that goes around the outside of the castle, the walls were angled so that when stones bounced off, they would bounce off to the attackers and hit the attackers. So they actually built the castles with these plans in mind. There were a number of features that were added to the castles to make it stronger. Most castles had round towers in their walls. This was so that soldiers could fire in all directions. So that would help with defending the castle massively if you can fire in any direction. The strongest building was the keep. It had numerous defensive features, including very thick walls. When I say very thick, I mean extremely thick. Narrow staircases, big cellars for sieges. So that is a cellar which would be full of supplies and food, so that if their castle is surrounded by attackers, they can wait in the castle until the attackers give up, and they might wait for weeks and weeks and weeks, so they need supplies of food in their cellars. Even the entrance was raised and had drawbridges to stop an attack. So as castles were frequently under attack, they had to be as strong as possible. As the attackers improved their methods of attack, the castle builders had to improve the castle's ability to defend. So you can see in this battering ram, how this would be used is the big wooden post in the centre of it would be swung into a door. You would also have attackers tunnelling underneath, so they would mine under the castle in the hope that it would collapse. And you had catapults as well that would be used to launch things into the castle to hopefully encourage people to try and escape out. I've already told you a little bit about sieges. So sometimes castles were so strong that the only method of attack was to wait. You would circle the castle, and this was called laying siege. It was basically staying out of arrow range and surrounding the castle until it was starved into submission, basically until they ran out of food. Sieges could take a very long time to work. Many castles had wells in the keep and large storerooms, always prepared in case of a siege. The best time to attack would be spring, as well as winter food, as all the winter food would be used up by then and the defenders would have little supplies to last on. Sometimes attacking a castle involved more gruesome methods though. In the 14th century, one castle was subject to an attack by having plague victims catapulted over the walls to spread the disease. So, you should have finished answering those questions. If there's any that you didn't get, you want to go back and listen through that again and check if there's anything that you have missed. The final task for this lesson is to write an explanation of why castles changed, trying to use P paragraphs. That means point, evidence, and explain. Okay, so I've given you an example here with some sentence starters, and I've colour-coded this. So the green bit is castles changed because the walls needed to be stronger. The problem with wood was, and that's you giving your evidence, so you're telling me what the problem was, and this meant they decided to use. So you're explaining why the problem with wood meant that they had to change castles. And I've given you 2 examples there to help you with that. There's also a super task if you finish that. I want you to pause the video and give yourself about 15 minutes to write those 2 paragraphs, and then you are finished. Thank you very much, guys.